Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief Special, and today we're going to be doing arguably my favorite thing, responding back to your comments. Well, I don't know if they're yours, or trolls, or bots, or ignorant comments, but comments nonetheless. And that's what we're going to be doing today. And of course, then we're going to be discussing it together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone, and so we have more material for the future. Let's go. Well, I've already seen some sneak peeks from my producers that I asked to pick out the comments, and boy, are we in for a treat.
Are you stupid, crazy, or just an idiot? Putin did not start this war in Ukraine. The USA and Europe, NATO, started this war in 2014. Russia is just protecting its freedom and people and helping everyone against NATO, which wants to take away our freedom and resources. No way, Jose. Russia is fighting for everyone. NATO and the US of North America want to make us poor and enslaved. NATO, Zelensky, Ukraine, Europe, USA are Nazi fascists. Welcome BRICS and the Global South, a multipolar system.
Boy, so much propaganda in one paragraph, but it's a huge paragraph. So let's do it bit by bit, right? Okay, are you stupid, crazy, or are you an idiot? I mean, idiot and stupid are kind of synonymous, so that's redundant. I suggest that you choose one. And crazy? I mean, yeah, I've done some wild card stuff, but how does that impact anything? Putin did not start this war in Ukraine. US plus Europe equals NATO started this war in 2014. No. Our president at the time, democratically elected president that ran on the platform of European integration and all that good jazz, decided to go to the signing of the European integration pathway and not sign it, and in turn join Russia's foe, NATO at the time, CSTO. People came out to protest. He started implementing dictatorial and fascist laws and literally shooting protesters that were unarmed and were peacefully protesting with rubber bullets, beating them with batons, and basically using force on them. So more and more people came out, and he eventually ended up fleeing to Russia. While there was a lot going on in the country and people were distracted, which is known as the Revolution of Dignity, Putin came in and put his troops in Donetsk and Luhansk and Crimea and annexed it. So no, the US and Europe and NATO, or NATO collectively, didn't start this war. Putin did. And if you look at the interviews of Putin from before, he actually says that there is no reason for him to invade Ukraine like he did Transnistria or like he did Georgia, because there is no ethnic conflict there.
Французский министр иностранных дел и председатель ЕС господин Кушнер выразил недавно озабоченность, что следующим конфликтом может быть Украина, а именно Крым и Севастополь как база российского военно-морского флота. Является ли Крым и Севастополь такой целью для России?
Вы сказали следующей целью. У нас не было и здесь никакой цели. Поэтому считаю, говорить о какой-то следующей цели некорректно. Это первое.
Вы это исключаете?
Если вы мне позволите ответить, то вы будете удовлетворены. Значит, Крым не является никакой спорной территорией. Там не было никакого этнического конфликта, в отличие от конфликта между Южной Осетией и Грузией. И Россия давно признала границы сегодняшней Украины. Мы, по сути, закончили в целом и в общем наши переговоры по границе. Речь идет о демаркации, но это же технические дела. Вопрос о каких-то подобных целях для России, считаю, отдает провокационным смыслом.
Well, and of course, then he backtracks on those promises. He also said there is no reason for him to do anything about Donetsk and Luhansk because there is no ethnic conflict there. But, you know, it's all a charade, and of course, he wanted to invade. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but the best advertisement for countries to join NATO was Putin. Because when he started doing what he was doing to Ukraine in 2022, many more countries that previously were not interested in NATO decided to join. And if you look at this lovely little poll, Ukrainians actually didn't care to join NATO until 2022. And in 2008, Putin's favorite little German henchwoman, Angela Merkel, said that Ukraine would not be joining NATO under any circumstance. So, yeah, what NATO expansion? Also, if Russia is protecting its borders and its people, as you said in your next sentence, why is it doing it on the territory of Ukraine, not Russia? Because for now, it's been 3 years, and all Russia is doing is slaughtering Ukrainian people and sending missiles to Kyiv, which is nowhere near the Russian border. Yeah, the math ain't mathing here, is it? NATO wants to take away our freedom and resources. No way, Jose. Russia is fighting for everybody. Have you seen an average Russian city, an average Russian salary, or an average Russian's quality of life? If you compare that to an average European person's quality of life, I think you're going to have your answer. Russia is not fighting for everybody. Russia quite literally is the gas station of the world, and it sells gas and oil to other countries for until the full-scale invasion for an enormous amount of money. And you know who don't have enough gas and oil? Russians themselves, because Russia doesn't care for its citizens. Russia doesn't care to maintain roads for its citizens. Russia doesn't care to provide them with plumbing. It doesn't care to provide them with gas, electricity. It doesn't care to provide them with heat. It doesn't care to provide them with anything. Have you ever seen any public entertainment places in Russia, like public parks, dog parks, anything like that? No. Most of Russian squares do not have places to sit for people because it doesn't want people to be outside and doing things. Russia's infrastructure is garbage, and that's because nothing is made for people. They still use the Soviet type of design, and that design was quite literally called pedestrian hostile, which means the design of the outside is hostile to people so that people don't spend time there. Yeah. There you have it. Moving on to Dirk Hauben 9960.
Yes, Ukraine should just surrender. We just want to live in peace here in Europe.
I don't believe you're from Europe because, European people, and that is very evident by Europe's support for Ukraine and your leaders' public statements, do want Ukraine to prevail over Russia and do want Ukraine to live happily ever after. Also, most European people and leaders understand that if Ukraine falls, you're not going to live there in peace in Europe because you're next. I don't know if you knew this, but Poland, for instance, is Europe. So how do you stop Putin from invading Europe if Ukraine becomes Russia and the border of Europe now is with Russia because Ukraine is absorbed, right? And, funny thing here is one of the things that I don't see a lot of people talking about is that if Russia manages to absorb Ukraine, what they are also managing to do is they're taking up Ukraine's army, right? Ukraine's resources, all of the Western weapons that have been shipped here, all of the factories that have been set up to produce shells and produce drones, all of the innovation Ukraine came up with. Ukraine is one of the most digitally forward countries in the world. Russia is absorbing all of that. And you think that's going to be safer for Europe if Ukraine falls, Russia takes all of our resources and all the weapons that we have been sent? Again, logic is not your strongest suit. That's okay. Some people are good at languages, some people are good at math, and some people are good at thinking stupid things. This one's going to be a long one, so buckle up. At Sam Manganaro 9254. I love that all of these names have numbers behind them, which likely means they're YouTube generated. Because people that do write massive comments and partake in YouTube, which means that they've had their account for a while, usually kind of make up their own usernames. Okay.
I think you are mixing Nazism with Zionism. Most Western countries have groups of neo-Nazis or ultranationalists. The only government that promotes Nazism in the world is Ukraine, by banning anything Russian, books, movies, music, language, and religion. This is similar to what Nazi Germany did in the 1930s until the end of World War II with the Jews. Also, the Ukrainian government celebrates Stepan Bandera, a Ukrainian Nazi leader during World War II, as a national hero. Does the Russian government celebrate Adolf Hitler or ban anything Ukrainian? The answer is no, so your argument does not hold water. Finding a couple of Nazis in the Russian army is the same as finding a few gay men. It means little, just propaganda narrative. When you find 100,000 out of the 800,000 currently fighting in the special military operation, then maybe Russia has a problem.
Oi boy, you're about to be turned on your back so fast here. So first of all, Ukraine never banned Russian anything until Russia invaded Ukraine and started slaughtering our people and sending missiles onto our country every night. Is Russia banning anything Ukrainian? Yes, it is. In the occupied territories that Russia took from Ukraine by force, people are not allowed to speak Ukrainian, identify as Ukrainian. They're not allowed to call their relatives in Ukraine. They're not allowed to literally do anything. They're not allowed to have a picture. Like, let's say you got married in Ukraine under Ukrainian laws before Russia came and took your home away. And you have a picture on your phone with your wife, and there happens to be Ukrainian symbolism behind you in the picture because you're standing in front of a Ukrainian government building, because that's where you would get married, right? Like City Hall. If you go outside and a Russian soldier decides to randomly check your phone because they do that, and they find a picture and there is a Ukrainian symbol in it, they're going to call you a Nazi and they're going to take you into a filtration camp. Ukrainian kids are told that Ukraine doesn't exist and Ukraine is a Nazi state, and they're being indoctrinated into the Russian army. Russia is burning Ukrainian books, Ukrainian museums. Russia is sending missiles onto Ukrainian schools. Russia literally says Ukraine doesn't exist as a state. And that's their official stance. Russian propagandists on TV say that all Ukrainians should be burned and exterminated, and this nation shouldn't exist. That's Adolf Hitler's rhetoric.
Russia attacks not only physically. It has been waging an information war against the world and peace for a long time.
Но самое важное, мы ни в коем случае не можем остановиться на полпути. То есть, типа там Львов кому-то оставить или еще что-то. Тогда в противном случае просто ничего не надо было начинать.
Я скажу
чтобы
больше,
там...
с такими санкциями, кто сказал, что надо останавливаться вообще в границах Украины?
Совершенно верно.
Ну и всем бед
Совершенно
один
верно.
ответ.
Вот.
Весь мир в труху, но не сейчас.
Да, совершенно
Бахнем,
верно.
обязательно бахнем.
Совершенно верно. Вот когда они поймут, что границы...
Страны, которые тебя не объявили персоной.
Границы
Ну, исходя из этой логики, мне надо срочно
для
Новую
нас
Зеландию,
совершенно
они
не
меня
важны.
объявили персоной.
Тоже мы же вместе там.
Когда они поймут, что границы Украины совершенно не важны здесь, и что можем и не остановиться, если они сами не на наших уже условиях не подпишут капитуляцию, не на каких-то, что так и быть, мы признаем там Крым,
Да нам
ДНР
вообще
и так
не важно, что они
далее.
признают.
Там уже будут совершенно другие
Зачем нам
разговоры, в том
их
числе...
признание Крыма и
Конечно,
Донбасса?
и об этом я и
Они для
говорю.
нас никто.
Об этом.
Turn off Russian propaganda. Say no to fakes and war.
Ukraine is simply protecting itself by not allowing kids to learn Russian language in schools, because our country's national language is Ukrainian, because then those kids grow up and they go into that info space, the Russian-speaking info space, and they start hearing brainwashing information, right? You're allowed to speak Russian in Ukraine. You're allowed to read Russian books in Ukraine. You know the amount of Dostoevsky books that I see on the subway? Honestly, it's upsetting. But no, you're not allowed to speak Russian. You're not allowed to be Russian. There are many Russians living here with Russian passports during the full-scale invasion that have been living here for a while. You're not allowed to be Ukrainian in Russia. As to you saying that Ukraine promotes Nazi values, Ukraine actually has never had a strong far-right party in its government ever, and it has the smallest presence of far-right parties in the greater Europe. Okay. Also, when you're talking about Adolf Hitler and what he did, concentration camps for Ukrainians and gulags are being created again in Russia and used. That's more synonymous to World War II. There are mass burials of Ukrainian citizens killed and executed with their hands behind their back in places that Russia invaded or places that were temporarily occupied by Russia. That's synonymous to what Adolf Hitler did. Russia doesn't promote Hitler? Yeah, sure, it doesn't, but it promotes Stalin. You know, the same man that killed more people in his reign than Hitler did? You know, the same man that created gulags? You know, the same men that executed all of these, the same men that executed Ukrainian elites, Ukrainian writers, Ukrainian nationalists, anyone that expressed anything that was Ukrainian, the same man that executed Ukrainian singers and songwriters, the same man that executed anyone who was trying to spread Ukrainian culture, a man who sent millions of people to their death in gulags, a man who orchestrated Holodomor. Yeah, they celebrate that one, and they think he was the best. So when you're saying that, Ukraine promotes Nazism, there are no Nazi parties or no far-right parties in the Ukrainian government, and their presence was always minuscule. It was less than 2%, which is a lot smaller than literally anywhere else in Europe. We have never had a far-right party gain traction, gain attention, or gain a lot of recognition. So yeah, you're wrong there. However, in Russia, those Nazis and their beliefs are being celebrated, and those units are being promoted and supported by the government. While in Ukraine, if someone in any unit in the military or anywhere really is spotted in public or is, discovered to have those beliefs, they're going to be dishonorably discharged. And there is going to be a whole thing opened into them legally. So yeah, bud, keep trying. I mean, this would work had there not been so much evidence of the opposite. And yes, there are hundreds of thousands. There are thousands of Nazis in Russia's military. That's how battalions work. Battalions have thousands of people in them. Anyways, in Stepan Bandera, I'm so tired of answering that narrative. You know, there was Holodomor. Stepan Bandera was fighting the Polish occupation and was fighting against Stalin. So yeah, he wasn't a Nazi. He actually died in 1954, I believe, in a concentration camp in Germany. Or sorry, he was released from a concentration camp in Germany and then was killed by a KGB agent. But yeah, there you have it. Context. Context matters.
Zelensky, having usurped power, wants to rule like Putin all his life. It's like copying everything like in the Russian Federation. There has been no democracy in Ukraine for a long time. People are caught, maimed, and sometimes killed without trial or investigation.
That literally didn't happen. Also, Zelensky did not usurp power. He came to power, and he came to power by being elected. And you've seen what Ukrainians do with presidents that usurp power, like Yanukovych. There would be a massive revolution from the Ukrainian people if we thought that Zelensky is a dictator. Thanks.
These people who stole on the streets and lay in the basements. The legal system is paralyzed. Judges are subordinate to the authorities. Freedom of speech is dead.
Freedom of speech is not dead. Here is an example of freedom of speech. I, for a fact, know that the office of the president watches this channel. And here is my take on the president. I think he's a fantastic president for foreign affairs. I don't particularly like his internal politics. I also don't particularly understand why my favorite person, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Kuleba, was fired or retired from his job, because I think he was doing the most fantastic job. This is a criticism of the president. Do I think he's a good leader for Ukraine in terms of internal politics? No. Do I think he's a great leader for Ukraine in terms of international politics and is exactly where he should be right now? Yes. Boo-hoo! What, I'm supposed to be dead tomorrow, according to you, but I'll see you next in the next episode.
Bloggers are subject to investigation, the media is completely controlled, and broadcasts propaganda. Ukraine needs a change of power and peaceful agreement with the Russian Federation.
I'm a blogger. I have been talking about the full-scale invasion of Ukraine since its inception in 2022. I have a TikTok channel, a YouTube channel, and I'm also on Twitter. I'm basically everywhere under YEWLEEA, and you can go check for yourself. I've been making lots of videos, some of them favorable to Zelensky, some of them not favorable to Zelensky, some of them favorable to the government, some of them not favorable to the government. I generally try to be honest and give my 2 cents, and boy, do I have a lot of opinions. And you know what? I'm still here. No, the media is not controlled by the government. Just because you're seeing a lot of people work together to dispel Russian propaganda does not mean the media is controlled by the government. Russian media has been banned in Ukraine, and you know what? I am so happy about that. Because my grandfather, for instance, was watching Russian media in the beginning of the full-scale invasion because he just likes to watch things in Russian. And he started believing some of Russia's narratives. We turned off cable and said that, Russian-speaking channels were banned, and boom, 2 weeks after he stopped watching Russian news, sense came back to him. So yeah, propaganda media is banned. Ukrainian media is independent. We have a ton of independent press. We have a ton of independent media. We have a ton of independent channels. We have a ton of independent bloggers. No one monitors anyone. Like, I could literally say anything I want on air and everything would be fine because it's not Russia and I'm not going to be jailed for expressing my discontent over some of government's actions. The thing is just, I don't even know what I want to express discontent about right now. Yeah, the media is not bought. The sad part is that now that Trump is trying to kill USA ID, a lot of independent media is going to be struggling very, very much because independent media worldwide is being funded by USA ID. Yeah, not run by Zelensky and, the demons that you have made up to exist around him. Next one.
Zelensky isn't a hero. He got a guarantee from Putin that he isn't going to be killed in the beginning of the war.
Can you back that up by anything other than Russian propaganda saying that? Also, even if so, he still didn't flee. He could have fled. And also, what guarantee from Putin? Same guarantee as Putin said he wasn't going to attack Ukraine. He wasn't going to annex Crimea. He wasn't going to invade Donbass. He wasn't going to, he doesn't want the rest of Ukraine. He's not trying to invade anyone. He just came here to save people. Same ceasefire agreements that he always backed out on. You can't trust Putin. So yeah, his guarantee means nothing. You can wipe your ass with it.
The back-then Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, brokered this deal. Only after this guarantee he addressed the Ukrainians, saying he'll be staying in the capital.
You don't know this. This is speculation, and this has only ever been said by Russia.
And the front lines are still very far away from Kiev. As long as the Russian troops will be closing in on Kiev, Zelensky and his buddies will be gone, probably even earlier. Now he's just sending the male population to the meat grinder through enforced conscription, whereas Russia hasn't really started the war yet, having 4 or 5 times as much population as Ukraine.
No, Russian troops were closing in on Kyiv, and Zelensky was in Kyiv with his entire team. Russian troops were killing civilians everywhere and mass executing them and putting them in mass graves. You really think Russian troops would not have gone after Zelensky and killed him and his entire team had they been able to reach Kyiv? Yeah, they would have. And again, it's so easy to spread disinformation because you take half-truths and you turn them into your narrative. It's half-truth, right, that Russians were never able to close in on Kyiv, but they got very damn close, and Ukrainians pushed them back. It's damn close that, sure, maybe Zelensky, to say that, if they were in Kyiv, he would have fled. Well, if they were in Kyiv, he would have had no opportunity to flee. But he was also there, and they were surrounding Kyiv, right? Until they were pushed back. And they would have definitely killed him. There were so many attempts on Zelensky's life since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. I think 14 plus. And you want to tell me that Russia doesn't want to execute him? Sure. And then we're going to address this last one that I found very funny because it actually has more to do with the United States than it does with Ukraine. But let's get it.
Yes, please. All Democrats and liberals, leave. Move to another country and actually learn firsthand how good you had it in America. But also, please do not return. You are all toxic and an embarrassment to mankind.
This is all in caps. And I'm assuming he's saying that because obviously I've said my piece about Donald Trump many times, and so he thinks that all liberals and Democrats should leave America. Well, first, I'm sorry, so you don't want people with an opinion different than yours to live in your country? Isn't that a sign of dictatorship and wanting a dictatorship to have all the people around you that just agree with you and with your opinions? Yes, it is. Another thing is, I hate that whole thing of like, oh, you don't like it here, then why don't you just leave? And they say that to American citizens. First of all, a lot of people are leaving because they're terrified of what's happening in America. And secondly, like, yeah, you don't like seeing a lot of terrible stuff happening to your country because you care. Because you care. And yeah, there are a lot of great things about the United States, and there was a lot to enjoy there. I would know. I've lived there for 14 years. But you know, a lot of these freedoms and a lot of these things that people are talking about that they enjoyed in America are being currently dismantled today by this administration. One of them is freedom of speech. One of them is access to factual information. One of them is the ability to choose who you are and be who you are, to express yourself. There are so many things that are being dismantled. And when people say these sort of like American nationalistic things is like, how good you had it in America. You know, here is something that I'm going to compare. When I lived in the United States, I barely ever went to doctors, and I barely ever took care of my health because I did not have the best health insurance, and things were so expensive. An MRI here in Ukraine and in the rest of the world is about $100. An MRI in America is $15,000, not because there is a shortage of MRI machines, but because you can. Because pharma is a business. It's not for health. American people have some of the highest obesity levels in the world, and diabetes levels and heart disease levels, because the American government, in a lot of ways, wants to feed Americans crappy food so then they can enter the cycle of the pharma business with pills and very expensive doctor's appointments. Since I have been here, you know, I can afford to go to the doctor whenever I want, and I can do that everywhere else in Europe. You can call an ambulance to your house, and there is going to be a whole medical professional team coming to treat you, and you are going to end up paying next to nothing for it. Because it's your life, and they gave an oath to save it. So yeah, while there are lots of fantastic things in America, and I'm not going to argue about it, don't act like America is superior to the rest of the world, and don't act like America is the only country that has freedoms, because from where I'm standing, where I'm at right now, and everywhere else in the world has a lot more freedoms to, you know, education because it's affordable, freedoms to healthcare because it's affordable, freedoms to affording groceries, freedoms to eat, you know, freedoms to eat healthy. Also, other places have freedom of speech, easy. That's not, you know, we're not living in the 1800s anymore. Most places have freedom of speech, freedom to choose who to marry, freedom to be yourself. Yeah, most places have that these days. Anyways, food for thought. That's all I have for you for today. If you enjoyed this type of the brief, please let me know in the comments down below, as well as leave your questions and suggestions and constructive criticism, because I love it and I read all of it. And sometimes you can see me in the comments, and sometimes I even respond. You know, I'm kidding. I try to respond as much as I can, but it's just, it's a lot of comments, and I read all of them. I absorb all of them. I just don't always have the time to react to all of them or formulate my thoughts properly. Anyway, send this video to a friend, give it a like, subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to turn on all of your notifications so you don't miss when the next video comes out, and I will see you next time. Ta-ta!